first component here, we're going to talk about the P16-M personal monitor mixer. This is the mixer that every musician would have on stage. So first we'll talk about dialing in your personal mix using the controls on the surface, and then we'll talk about the connectivity that you have on the back of the P16-M for getting your mix out to the monitors. So taking a look at the surface of the P16-M, we're going to go through some of the controls here. The first arrow you see are pointing at the channel selects. So basically you would just, any channel that you want to adjust, say your vocal is on channel 1, you would press channel 1, and that would activate the channel, the volume control, the pan control, and the EQ for that channel. It works just like the select buttons on your X32. And you'll also notice that there's 2 lights on each select button. The green light is going to be a signal indicator, so you'll always know if signal's coming in on that channel, and the red light is indicating that the channel is selected. Next over here we have solo and mute controls. So again, when you have a channel selected, you can press solo and that channel will solo. If you press the mute button, you can go ahead one by one and select channels in order to mute them. To the right, probably the most important control, of course, is your volume control. So as I mentioned before, you would just select the channel, and then you could raise or lower its volume using that encoder just up to the right of that arrow. I also want to mention that the volume encoder is also a push button. It's like a panic mute function. So if you press that button in, it will actually mute that channel. So if you're having trouble turning up your volume on a channel, first thing I would tell you to check is by pressing that button. Maybe you just have it muted. Right to the left are going to be your pan and balance controls. So any channel that's selected, you can pan to the left or to the right. And this button is also a push button. So when you push the pan button, it'll actually return you right to the center. So it's a nice little shortcut. Right above that is our equalizer. And this is a unique feature on the P16-M in that the EQ actually works on every channel individually. And it's actually a 3-band with a sweepable mid. So this really allows you to dial in pretty good mix on this little P16-M. So if you wanted to EQ a channel, you would select the channel, and you actually can do an EQ on the entire main mix by pressing the main button all the way to the left, which we'll highlight in a second. Just to the right is our output section. So you do have a limiter to protect your ears in case a nasty feedback loop gets going or anything. And then just to the right of that is going to be your level control. That's your final output level control, for your headphones or to your floor wedge. Over back to the left is that main button I was talking about. So when you want to think about the main button almost like a master fader or your main left-right. So if you want to EQ the master mix, select main and use the EQ. This is another thing you want to check here is the volume on your main. There's actually a separate volume for your main control. It's almost like a master fader. So if you're not getting enough volume out of the P16-M, the first place I would check would be by pressing main and making sure you have that dialed up. Maybe not all the way, but definitely close to it. And that'll open up a lot of headroom for you.
Just wanted to mention, John, that also when you're on that main, your volume encoder also becomes a master kill switch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great benefit of having that. So you have 2 ways of, you can either press that button really quick or you can hit the mute button. And, as Joe said, if anything goes wrong, you can press the main and have control over that right away. Now up on the upper left-hand corner are the setup buttons on the X32. So all the way to the left is a link button. So if you press the link button and then you press a channel, it'll basically link to the adjacent channel. So this works exactly like the X32, where you can link 1 to 2 and 3 to 4, basically odd even pairs. And when you do this, it'll automatically pan those guys, opposite left and right. Next over to the right is the group button. This allows you to group channels together. Say you have 8 channels worth of drums, and you're already dialed in the drum mix, and you just want to be able to control the drums. It's actually just like the DCAs on your X32. So you just press the group button, and then one by one you can press channels, and you'll notice that those channels will all light up red and blink, indicating that they're part of a group. Now, to the right of that, we have our store and recall buttons. just like the X32 has 100 scenes, the P16-M has 16 recall slots. Basically, each button acts as a slot for a scene, for the P16-M. So that's really simple to do. Basically, you press and hold the store button, and then you would, at the same time, you would pick one of those slots and press it twice, and it would lock into there. And then if you ever wanted to recall that scene, you can press and hold recall, and then press the button of that slot that you saved to. And we'll probably have Justin show you that on the webcam in a little bit. So that's the surface of the P16-M. So let's take a look at the back panel. Starting with, of course, the headphone jack. It does have a dedicated headphone jack with a pretty high-powered headphone preamp. So if you're using headphones or directly to an in-ear. To the left of that, you also have a stereo line out. So this is great if you're using a powered floor wedge, like our F1320D. Next, we have a MIDI input. A lot of people ask what this is for. And this is really handy if you want to use something else besides if you want to control the mix on the P16-M with something else, such as our BCR 2000. That would allow you to have maybe all of the volumes on separate rotary encoders, so you wouldn't have to use the select button. Or maybe you'd use the BCF 2000 to put your channels on faders or some other controller. So you have that ability on the P16-M using the MIDI in jack. Next to that on the left is our Ultranet. Of course, there's an Ultranet input that would be coming from your P16D or your direct connection to the X32. And then to the left of that is a throughput jack. So you actually do have the ability to daisy chain P16Ms together. You'll notice there's a little picture of a power adapter above the P16M, because if you're using a through jack, your power is not going to transfer over to the next mixer. So even if you're connected to a P16D, only that first P16M is going to get power. And if you use the throughput jack, you're going to have to plug that second P16M in with the included power adapter.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. So I just wanted to take a minute to show one of my favorite features of the P16M, which is the ability to be able to save settings and store different various settings on your 16 channels, and then also be able to have the ability to do a total recall and bring up the various different settings that you have saved. So I just wanted to show you guys real quickly how to do that. So you'll notice right now that we are on the main. We have the main button selected to show the overall mix or the overall mixer. To select each channel and to see the various different settings, EQ, panning, volume, etc. Then we have the main button to show the overall mix. Now, to store and to save the mix, you simply want to press and hold the fourth button under the setup in the top left portion of the P16M. You press and hold the store button. You'll notice that one of the channels lights up with a green indicator. This just indicates that you have previously stored something on that channel or used that channel. So for our purposes here, we're going to press and hold the same channel, and you'll notice that it is now showing a red and green indicator, and then we press it a second time to save it. The store button will disappear. The indicator button under the store button will disappear, and you'll know that that has been saved. Now let's make some changes just on the main screen here, or on the main part of the mixer here. Let's do some panning and pan our mix all the way over to the right. Not all the way over, but just almost all the way over, so that we can see two buttons here. And then we'll also reduce the main volume encoder, bring it down here, just to show you that we've made some changes. We'll also make some changes on the EQ as well. And let's store these, save these changes. So again, we're going to hit the store button, press and hold it. Once again, the fourth channel is flashing to indicate that that's previously what we've selected, but this time we're going to save it on the fifth channel. Once I press the channel 5, you'll notice that the red and green indicators are flashing, and then I will, as I mentioned, press it a second time to save it. Now, to showcase these differences, let's do a recall. So to do a recall, we're going to press the third button on the top left area under the setup section under the P16-M. We press and hold the recall button, and again, the indicator is showing us the channel that was previously used or selected. In this case, let's bring up channel 4, where we saved our initial settings so that we can see the difference. And to do that, I'm going to select channel 4 and deselect the recall button, and you'll notice the change in the volume, overall volume, as well as the panning. We had it pan slightly to the left. Now let's do recall and showcase the 5th channel just to show those changes one more time. So to do that, again, I press and hold the recall button, and then I press the 5th channel and let go of the recall button, and you'll notice the volume changes as well as the changes in the panning on the main mix. And that is how you do a store and a recall on the P16-M.
I just wanted to point out, just to really clarify, that so you have 16 memory locations. So this just allows you to build, a different mix possibly for different sections of a show, that you might be working on, or a band could have one preset for set 1 and one preset for set 2, etc. So that's going to save, into each one of those memory positions, the complete mix of where you have all 16 channels set, where they're panned, where they're EQ'd. Your complete mix preset is being able to be stored and recalled. Something we didn't really mention is on the EQs, since there's just one set of encoders up at the top, it's kind of like your channel strip. When you go from, say you have kick drum on channel 1 and snare drum on channel 2, if they're EQ'd very differently, when you go to channel 2, you actually have to sweep the EQ to grab where the frequency was set on that other channel. I remember the first time I used it, it took me a few minutes to kind of get that, because it sounded like the EQ wasn't doing anything on an individual channel, and I realized that I had to sweep the knob until it grabbed where the frequency was set for that particular channel, which is actually common on certain encoders. So.
Right, so basically if that encoder isn't lit up bright red like the treble is right now, it's not doing anything. It doesn't actually change the sound until you hit that point where you were before, which is, as Joe said, is pretty desirable in this scenario.
Yeah, and it's also, as John said, it's totally visual. Once you see it, when the light gets much more intense, then that's where you were on that particular channel on say the frequency or the cut boost kind of thing.
Cool. So yeah, if anyone has any, I hope that, I know we got a couple of questions about the EQ. I think that kind of clears it up. It's basically, you just need to, as Joe said, you just have to turn that knob, and then once it's bright red, then the EQ is kind of active. You can make changes, and then you'll notice.
You know what, Justin, since we're on the camera, can you also demonstrate so it's really clear about the that main switch? When you're back on the main switch, just keep in mind, as John said, the volume encoder, which is all the way to the right. You want to put your hand on that, Justin? The volume encoder is now your mix bus out, which is feeding your output. The level up above it where it says output is just your headphone level, but this is like your master bus level for the entire 16 inputs. So as John said, if you find that, geez, we were getting a number of calls that they were saying that the P16 wasn't loud enough, even though they had the level totally cranked up at the top. And we realized that they just had their master bus barely on, and yet they were cranking their headphone level all the way up. I personally really like this. Like in a live situation, definitely have your musicians leave it on that main screen. And if something goes wrong, if something starts feeding back in their ears or whatever, they can just hit that button, and it's a master kill switch for everything going to the bus output on the P16 on that one particular unit. And as Justin just showed, it's just like a kill switch.
Hey Justin, can you sweep that bass EQ knob all the way around? Yeah, there you go. We must have just had it at a different spot. A couple people were asking because it didn't look like it lit up before, but it must have been at the extreme, maybe left or right or something. Awesome. Okay.
I'm not sure if I understand this question. Does the bus send? Are they auto linking on the P16-M?
I think I might have answered that. I think he means that when I set up those stereo submixes, for example, on the drums, does the P16 automatically, since it's a stereo subgroup, will the P16 automatically, left and right pan it? And the answer is actually it won't, because when you're sending those signals out the P16 routing menu on the X32, you're just sending a bunch of audio. You're sending 16 channels of audio, and the P16 is just like a regular mixer. So you do have to tell it. It doesn't know that you have a stereo pair coming in 3/4, so you just have to link them. Justin, can you just do that real quick? You just press the link button, and if you press 3, it'll just automatically link to the adjacent one, number 4.
So this is, a perfect example is, a stereo keyboards where you have a left and right output. It'd be nice just to be able to link those channels together. It'll hard pan, 3 all the way left and 4 all the way right. And also your level control is now going to just pull up the left and right channel equally together, so you don't have to make individual adjustments for a stereo input. One thing that I really love on the P16 is you're in a lot of situations where you might have a full set of drum mics where you have a kick mic, a snare, hi-hat, toms, overheads, etc. Say you're using 8 channels just for drums. You can go in and pan everything out the way you want it, get it all EQ'd, set the relative levels between where you want everything to sit in the mix, and then you use that group button up at the top, and then just group all your drum tracks together. It makes a perfect little subgroup of drums, and then when you select any of the drums in that little group, the volume encoder is just bringing that whole subgroup up and down, so you don't have to do that individually. So it's great for situations where you have multiple mics like that.
We had a question about the volume knob on the right, the actual output volume knob. Is that always lit up? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's part of your recall, is it, Joe?
No, it's not, because that's just like like your output. So.
Right.
But what's cool is the limiter, and I don't know if you have signals running through this or not, Justin, but the limiter, the threshold, as you turn that threshold to the left to drop the threshold down, the LED glows more and more as you're limiting the signal, which is very cool.
Somebody asked if all the linking and group settings are saved in the 16 memory locations. Yes, pretty much everything else except for how you have that output section is saved. Your EQ, your pan, volumes.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a safety thing, where obviously you want to be very careful with the master level that's feeding someone's in-ears or a powered wedge. Somebody's ear might be near it, and you change presets, and it jumps way up in level. So if we have any dead time, if you want to switch back to John's screen, I know there were a couple of earlier questions about how we configured the something about the audience mic and a few of the other channels.
Oh, I went through that. He was asking about how to do it like a mono subgroup, and basically on the X32, the way that if you're using a subgroup, it's basically going to be a pair, and so we took